Hi, this is Jeff Stone of Grandpa's Pride Barbecue from the Panhandle of Florida, and you are listening to the Barbecue Central Show.
Start the game! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike the match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
Good evening and welcome to the really big Barbecue Central Show. This is the show that talks about all things important in the world of barbecue and grilling. This show originating from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. I'm your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evening's live fire fun and frivolity show. If you want to jump in with the show or keep in contact, here's how you do all of that.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to greg@thebbqcentralshow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in case you get the newsletter. By the way, you can sign up for the newsletter if you go to the main page of the website. And at the top of the navigation, there's a little menu item that says newsletter. Pop into that. And then just leave me an email address. I don't need anything other than that. And then every Tuesday afternoon around 3 p.m. Eastern, you will be gifted a newsletter that will give you the heads up and talking points with my guests later in that evening. And here we are coming up first out of the gate. It is the second Tuesday of a month. We missed him last month, but he is back and better than ever here. The creator of AmazingRibs.com and in the green room already. There he is, Meathead. So he's ready to rock and roll. Stay tuned for him in just a few moments. We're going to be talking about something that has been out. It's been out. Rarely is something on my radar first ahead of a lot of these other experts, but I can tell you with 100% assurity that Koji has been on my radar well in advance of anybody else, long before anybody started talking about it. Why is that? Because it just so happens that Cleveland is the home of the Koji master, who has been on the show before, who's also a master mushroom forager, Jeremy Umansky, who wrote Koji Alchemy. I don't claim it to be a best-selling book, but as it relates to Koji, it is the reference material. He had a co-writer with that, and I'm not going to remember the name of that man, which I apologize for, but I know Jeremy personally. I dine in his establishment regularly. I eat his wife's baked confections, not as regularly anymore since we're on the Do Wellness program. However, Koji will be a topic of discussion here this evening. So if you are not headlong into it as I am, then you will get an introduction from Meathead, and then possibly, if there is further interest, I find time for Jeremy Umansky to rejoin the show, or perhaps we put him in a panel discussion with Meathead down the road and even talk further Koji alchemyism. But tonight will be your introduction if it hasn't already crossed your radar. Long way to go for me to say Meathead shortly. Then, after Meathead, and we missed him last month as well, the contributing barbecue editor to Southern Living Magazine and the guy that hosts RobertFMoss.com's website and what I'll call now the former author of the Q Sheet, Robert Moss. He didn't say it's gone away, but I know what my inbox looked like, and it is as ghost as it comes when the Q Sheet is supposed to show up on my inbox like Saturday evenings. I remember reading. How often would you ever hear me see this? I remember reading. Like, I would never say that on purpose, but I remember reading the cue sheet and keeping up with what's happening in Robert's little corner of the world and the thing that he's covering, all this fun stuff. So Robert Moss will be back at it 35 past the first hour. That will neatly wrap the first hour, and then we will move to the second hour, where we will find, in an unprecedented move, coming out of the fourth Tuesday, not out of the bullpen, we're saving that for a show friend as well, but coming right out of the gate in the second hour, the Michigan embedded correspondent and the executive producer of the Best Moments of the Barbecue Central Show in 10 minutes or less, John Solberg. Why do we have John on? Well, last year, Doug Scheiding was on the longest-running embedded correspondent from Texas, or as Sam the Cooking Guy and I renamed both Doug and Rusty last week, the Dumbspondents. If you missed it, go back and check out the podcast from last week and hear why we call Rusty and Doug the embedded Dumbspondents. Nevertheless, Doug is the longest-running embedded correspondent, and we did a whole segment with Doug about how he has grown and cultivated and acquired isn't the right, curated quite a successful Instagram account. And we talked about the pitfalls and what he has to do it in order to keep it as organic as possible, stay away from the bots, make sure nobody's questioning your integrity as a social media person, because that mattered to him. Some of you other schmucks, it doesn't matter. There's no integrity. It's all about the numbers. Grow at will. Grow at any cost necessary. Doesn't matter. But to Doug, it matters, and he laid out the whole thing last year, so go back and get that if you missed it. John will be talking to us about how he happened upon, within, I think it's Instagram, maybe it's Facebook, but I believe it's Instagram, this thing called Reels. It's blowing up like crazy. Facebook owns Instagram, now that I'm thinking about it. I might be wrong in that, but I believe I'm correct on that. Reels is something that's blowing up right now. Even the most savvy social media person is saying, if you are not taking full advantage of growing your Reels side of social media, you're missing out. John is fully invested in Reels. Not only that, John has figured out some way to get paid by Reels. What do we love here most of all? What did we nickname the show last year? The Barbecue Central Business Show. That's right, because we are capitalists. We want to make money, not at any and all costs, but at the right costs. And John has figured out a way to do money on Instagram. He's going to talk all about it. And closing the show tonight, a second season of what I call the Podumentary. You might know him as a longtime Centralite, making his debut towards the tail end of the show last year, doing his brisket slathered in mayo binder, which is the food trend I and I alone started in 2022. Joe Martinez joins us. Joe Martinez has started a food truck out there in Texas, and we are going to start our first of 4, of course, quarterly segments with him, where we will dive really deep and uncover all of the dead bodies and all of the pitfalls and all of the monies and investments. If you have always thought, my burning passion is to leave this daggum 9-to-5er and follow my passion as a barbecue trailer owner, well, boys, strap in, because Joe Martinez is going to give you 4 hugely in-depth segments as we get through 2023 that may inspire you to take it up or may slap you around with the reality of the situation and perhaps preventing something that would bankrupt you, lead you to the court of divorce, or both, who knows? And tonight, we are not getting into any business that involves the selling of barbecue. He's operating currently, but we're going to do it all the way from concept to the run-up to opening of day one. Just like we did with Rusty Monson last year, we're going to do it with Joe Martinez this year, and I think you will be happily surprised with the amount of information that Joe has told me he's going to share. And I said, Joe, look, this only works when you give out all of the information. I am absolutely going to be asking you the most minute and inquisitive questions on how you get started doing this and what the money situation likes, because that's what most people either are or are not taking into proper consideration. What's it going to cost you up front? Is it going to cost you something up front? Joe Martinez here to answer all those questions as we close the show out here this evening. Didn't even get to the open. How about that? Too busy promoting the rest of the show because this show is on fire already. As I had mentioned, Meathead is ready to go. And Robert Moss after him, John Solberg in the second hour, and closing it out, Joe Martinez. Since 1991, the National Barbecue and Grilling Association has been the voice of the barbecue and grilling industry by helping members network and to learn from proven professionals. New owner and leader Cal Phelps looks to take the history of this organization and move it to new heights in 2023 and beyond. And they start that with their NBBQA annual conference, which is currently open for registration. You can go to NBBQA.org. And it's all right there on the main page to further check out. Now, if you're somebody in the business of barbecue and grilling and you are looking to stay on top of trends, market your business better, learn from the folks who have done it right, and continue to evolve in a market that is itself ever-changing, this is the conference you want to attend. It starts Wednesday, February 15th. It goes through Saturday, February 18th. And it will be held at the beautiful Wyndham Orlando Resort and Conference Center in the Celebration area of Orlando. Make your reservations now and then take advantage of being around the most successful people in the industry during those 4 days. Walk right up to such legends as Mo Cason or Dr. Barbecue, Mark Lambert, Tuffy Stone. The list goes on, and then ask them questions that you want to have answered. You might be surprised at how approachable they are and how open they are to help you succeed in the industry because, hey, it's our industry too. We want everybody to succeed and stay in it for as long as possible and be successful as possible. Once again, it's February 15th through the 18th in Orlando. Go to NBBQA.org for all the information, lodging, pricing. Don't miss out. And if you aren't a member yet, consider joining and have the access to videos and other info in case you aren't able to make trips later in the year. You can watch it all there. NBBQA.org. That's NBBQA.org. And we are back with Meathead right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Broadcasting live from the Barbecue Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
Welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by CookinPellets.com, your number one source for quality wood pellets for all your pellet-driven cookers. Visit CookinPellets.com for more information or to purchase. That's CookinPellets.com. I have given dates to Chris Becker to come on this show to talk about a number of things that are related to the pellet industry, but we will wait and see when he has time to join the show. My first guest tonight, of course, has created one of the most heavily trafficked barbecue and grilling websites on the face of the earth, a best-selling author, a Barbecue Hall of Famer, a Barbecue Central Show guest Hall of Famer, and we race to the hotline and welcome back our friend Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. Of course, Meathead, yes or no, in your expert sports opinion, because you are Paper Gator, will the QB for Georgia, Stetson Bennett Jr. III, be drafted in the NFL, or will he be undrafted?
Oh, he'll be drafted. It'll be down lower, but he'll be somebody's very talented backup, and who knows? He might. I mean, the guy has an arm, and he throws pinpoint passes, and he's a winner.
rounds
21,
rounds 1 through
41
4,
and 3 or something.
rounds 1 through 4, or later than that.
Maybe fourth.
Maybe 4th. All right, we'll go with that. I'm going
Hey,
undrafted myself.
I got to talk a couple of things I want to get on.
All right.
Number one, Mayo.
Yes. Oh, I already have a question about Mayo.
2016. It's in that book.
Not according to social media last year, Meathead. I started it. And as long as I keep saying it, it's truth. It doesn't.
And in fact, I was interviewed by the LA Times on it in 2015.
Meathead, I have an alternative set of truths that happened in 2022, and we'll leave it at that. What's your other point?
The other one is everybody out there who thinks they know something about the internet is wrong. As of there is something earth-shaking that is about to happen to the internet that will upset billions of business models.
Millions and billions of business models. Oh,
What's happening is in March.
Yes.
In March, Microsoft Bing is going to start using AI in their search results, and Google will not be far behind.
All right.
That means if you go to Google and you ask it, how do I use Koji on a steak?
Yes.
It will not necessarily point you to a website that gives you the answer. Google will give you the answer. Google will use their AI to scrape the internet, and it will lift the info. And just like those little snippets that they're giving at the top of the page now, you will get Google will be stealing your business, and you had better find a better way to survive if you depend on Google traffic.
So is this going to be some other form? I have in my agenda to talk about ChatGPT. Is this a form of that then? Because that's artificial intelligence as well, and everybody's talking about that.
Yeah, ChatGPT is one of the best examples out there. And as you and I both know, we've played with it. It's cool. It does some good stuff, but it's not there yet. But it will be, and it will be soon.
Oh, yeah.
And Google has its own version. So I don't know what Bing is up to, but eventually, if you go to Google and ask it a question, it'll give you the answer.
Meathead, I have a question coming from Dennis in Colorado. It's probably a month and a half old at this point, but he says, "Hey, Greg, I sent you a video of a chef that is comparing oil versus mayo used on asparagus. I thought this was kind of interesting. Thought maybe you could ask Meathead on an upcoming segment to elaborate more on its use." Here's what I'm seeing, Meathead. You claim through reference and actual fact that you started talking about mayo. I claim I started it last year, so we're at odds. Nevertheless, what we can both agree on is that somehow or another, Mayohead is becoming all of a sudden a much bigger thing to use on the outsides of things. You put it on the inside of a hamburger, use it in a recipe, this and that and the other thing. But for whatever reason now, it does seem to be availing itself much more readily on social media. Here's Dennis asking about rubbing it on some asparagus before you put it on a grill, or at least some chef doing some type of comparison. So this is just an oil that can perhaps hold rub better.
Yeah, I think that, for many, many years, barbecue enthusiasts have been putting mustard on meats to help hold down their rubs. If you look at mustard, that is the grocery store version in a jar, it's mostly water or vinegar or both with a little bit of mustard powder in it. To see how weak it is, all you got to do is taste Chinese mustard, which is a lot stronger. And if you want to make your own, you go get Coleman's powder mustard and mix it with a lot of water, and boy, that'll blow your head off. But there's not a lot of flavor in the mustard. It's just to glue down the spices and herbs. Now, some people moved to ketchup, to oil, to mayonnaise. The bottom line is they don't impart much flavor. In fact, I have for many years been just using water. I'll get a slab of ribs. I'll go over the sink. I'll get my hands a little wet. I'll pat the ribs with my wet hands, and I'll just sprinkle the rub on. I just want to hold the rub on there. The oil is not going to conduct more energy. Most of it drips off. Same thing for the mayo. Mayo does have egg and some acid in there, vinegar or lemon juice or something, but they're not substantial flavor. Just like when you spritz with apple juice, the apple flavor is so dilute, it's not going to impact the flavor. You want to get a lot of flavor on a piece of meat, use spices, herbs, sauce. That'll put a lot of flavor on it. These fluids, liquids, they're not much flavor. I don't know what the result of that test was with asparagus. I'd be interested in seeing it. I doubt it makes much difference. One of the neat things about mayo is it's pretty good at helping fish release from grill grates. Fish, as you know, is the bane of anybody who grills. It just really sticks, and finding a way to get it to let loose is really tricky. And mayo is pretty good at it.
I've told this story before on the show, but the show has gone on for years and years and almost decades at this point. There's a lot of new people on the instant chat here in YouTube. The other thing that I know about mayo is what somebody told me from a very successful fast food chain called Arby's. I had many, many years ago, right when that their brisket smokehouse sandwich was coming out for the very first time. It might have been 2014 or maybe even before that. I had the guy on that came up with the recipe, and I took him to task. I said, hey, the one thing that sticks out to me, aside from cheese, which is weird on a brisket sandwich, but it's fast food, so cheese evidently has to go on everything. It's on fish sandwiches, you name it. I said, I don't understand the mayo. And he said, well, did you taste the mayo? I said, no, but I saw it on there. And he said, right. And here's why. Because the mayo will now accept the flavor of the brisket. And when you're eating that brisket sandwich, the mayo is coating the top of your mouth and all sides of your mouth, and it's giving you a much more briskety feel and taste, and we don't have to use as much meat on the sandwich in order to satisfy that a brisket flavor that you might be looking for. So it was almost done as, I don't want to say cost-cutting measure, but certainly allowing you to continue to have a beef brisket flavored sandwich, but doing it with less meat because the mayo is helping intensify the brisket flavor that's already on there. How about that?
The mayo on before cooking?
As he's making the sandwich, you take the bottom part of the bun, slather it with mayo, and then build the sandwich up from there. Yeah. So that was
mayo
new to me.
Yeah, I mean, we all love to put mayo on egg salad, tuna salad. It does help flavor. Arby's has been using their horsey sauce for years, which I think is mayo based.
Yes. Tonight's subject, Meathead, is something again that I had said in the open has been well on my radar for years. It's called Koji. There you have the book right there, Koji Alchemy, Jeremy Umansky, co-writer. Who's the other guy on there? I forget his name.
Rick Shih.
Rick Shih.
Shih.
Yeah.
It's a very nice book. It is very advanced and technical.
Oh yeah.
I'm writing as you know, I'm writing a book. My deadline is rapidly approaching, and I have a little section in the book on using Koji, and I've been fiddling with it, and it's very interesting. And I think I have managed, as I like to do, to distill it down to some of the basics.
Where did you find out about Koji?
I don't recall specifically, but
has it been in the last couple of years, would you say?
Pardon?
Was it in the last couple of years, or have you known about it much longer?
I think when I went to Japan, I learned a little bit about it when I saw them making miso. Miso is made with Koji. So is soy sauce. It's a fungus, Aspergillus oryzae, and people go, ooh, a fungus on my steak, but let's not forget that mushrooms are a fungus, and and cheese is made many cheeses are made with fungi. Yeast is a fungus, and without yeast, there's no wine or beer. So it's nothing to be grossed out by. What people have been doing is they've been putting a form of koji, and I'll talk about the different forms in a minute, on beef, on steaks. And you leave it on for a week or so, and the fungus alters. It's loaded with enzymes. It's loaded with enzymes, and those enzymes really do a job on proteins and starches. And it alters the flavor of the surface of the meat and a little bit down below. And people say it resembles aged beef, dry aged beef.
Yeah.
And that's how it caught on. And I think resembles is the operative word. It's not exactly the same, but it's interesting. It gives it an interesting character, a flavor that you wouldn't necessarily identify as beef right away. The raw form, I've got it right here, is a package here. It's like a rice cake. It's dry and hard inside, and these are white rice that have been inoculated with the fungus and then dried out. And you can buy this on Amazon.
You just search Koji?
It's all, you got to search for Koji, and it's all in Japanese.
Is it shipped from Japan?
Pardon?
Is it shipped from Japan?
Oh, yeah, it's from Japan.
All right.
No, it's shipped from Amazon's warehouse. But,
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of Japanese and Asians in this country that work with Koji. And people do make their own miso. I'm just pulling up. I think I can get you the brand name that I use.
I can probably just go down to Jeremy's restaurant and he can give me a pound of Koji. He's probably got about a truckload.
But not all your listeners. It's Miyako Koji.
Miyako.
And it's Koji, or called Koji rice. And what you do with it is you put it in a jar with warm water and leave it sit at room temperature for a week. And you get, I don't know how well you can see this.
Oh, sure. We can see it.
But it's got the rice and the Koji in there.
Looks gross.
And this is the stuff you slather. Now, some people just take the rice and crumble it up and put it on the beef. When you inoculate it with water like this, you can keep it in the fridge for weeks. It becomes something called shio Koji. Shio Koji is different than Koji rice. It's Koji that has been blossomed with water and allowed to grow. And you can actually buy shio Koji. Here's a bottle of it. This too is available on Amazon.
All right.
And it's labeled shio Koji. It's more expensive to buy it like this, but it's all ready to go. This stuff, you just pour it over your steak. And this is cool. For my wife's birthday, we went to a restaurant that is experimenting. You know, it's one of these experimental restaurants and they were putting shio Koji on butter.
Really?
And they served some beautiful bread with Koji inoculated butter, and it's effing awesome. It's just it becomes kind of cheese-like. It's like butter flavor times 2, and it's really rich, almost a little Parmesan flavor. I just absolutely fell in love with it, and I've made it using this stuff and my homemade stuff, and it's really cool. And you can use it on chicken, turkey, steaks. It alters, because of the enzymes, it alters the flavor profile. And usually the results are pretty good.
Does it give you a chart of how long you want to keep that stuff on steak in order to replicate, let's say, a 45 or a 90-day dry-aged steak taste?
There are no... I have not seen anything definitive. The general rule of thumb that people who've been playing with steak is in the 7 to 10 day range. But I think you can push it further or less. You know, it's like sous vide. There's rules of thumb when you're going to sous vide, say, beef ribs, 145 or 155. Well, it's a personal preference, how the texture suits you. 24 hours or 48 hours. Again, it's a preference. You start and you experiment and you find out what suits your taste. When
you do the butter, you had mentioned all sorts of different flavors that you like, but texture-wise, is it just like butter, or does it also just cheese up?
No, just like butter. And it takes about a week, and it's just awesome. If you want to play with it, go to Amazon and just buy the Shio Koji.
How much?
It's easier than buying the
How much
Koji
is that stuff?
rice. I don't recall.
Is it significantly more expensive in your right hand, though, than in your left hand?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think buying the jar is more expensive than the rice cake.
Sure.
This is Koji rice. This is Shio Koji. I don't recall. You can look them up, but I do believe Shio Koji is significantly more than buying the rice. It only takes a week or 10 days to turn the rice into Shio Koji, but I was in a hurry to try it. And I tell you, I just absolutely love what it does to butter. And I'm going to start playing with other things with it, like, burger meat and stuff.
Going totally off topic. I had Sam the cooking guy on last week, and at some point in our discussion, he just tossed out the fact. So last year, he got this real big dry aging unit, and they've been dry aging, big sides of beef right along here. But then all of a sudden, he drops this little tidbit on me and says, yeah, we, for one of our upcoming videos, we did dry aged chicken. So they had a couple whole chickens, stuck them in the dry ager for 2 weeks. I think it was 14 days to the exact. And said they were some of the most delicious chickens to both him and the production guys that are shooting and tasting along with the videos. He said it was great. You ever heard anything about dry-aged chickens? They looked absolutely terrible.
I have not. I've played with dry aging, but not chicken. As you probably know, Jim Compart of Compart Pork dry ages some of his pork, and I've actually written him to talk to him about the process. But there's in Sherman Oaks, California,
home of porno.
There's a place called The Joint. Sherman Oaks, California. It's just north of LA. There's a place called The Joint, and he has these giant steak aging lockers, and he's aging fish. And I've written a little bit about that in the book too. People who taste that fish do backflips. People are getting a little wild out there.
Well, Koji is the next thing that's going to absolutely rage. You are certainly confirming that. You're going to continue to play along with that. And for folks that are just tuning in tonight for the first time and aren't overly familiar with Meathead, you just need to go to AmazingRibs.com and see what this guy's all about. All right, one last thing before we go.
Some of this stuff is not on the website yet. It's in the book, which will be out in a year. But I'm just thinking, hey, let's try Koji on mayonnaise.
Why not? Start a new trend. Koji mayonnaise bindered brisket. It'll be the next huge trend.
I'll try it, and 2 years later, you'll claim you invented it.
That's right. Why not? It worked this time. It worked last time. It'll work this time around, no doubt. And again, it's AmazingRibs.com. We will see you in February, Meathead.
Yes, and by the way, just a quick apology for missing last month. I had a little medical issue that I was unable to attend, and I regret missing it.
We are happy to see you that you are back and better than ever, no doubt. Meathead, thank you. That's Meathead right there from AmazingRibs.com. So stop over there if you don't visit regularly and become that much more knowledgeable of a live fire person. Robert Moss is ready to go, and I will mention to you that Pits and Spits has the best looking, best cooking smokers and grills currently available on the market. Pits and Spits offers a full family of products, including traditional offset smokers, wood pellet grills, charcoal grills, travel grills, hybrid cookers, fire pits, and much more. Pits and Spits has been one of the only American fabrication shops that's focused on smokers and grills for almost 40 years. Why is that important? We're able to put an emphasis on quality and design, locally sourced material, and unmatched attention to detail. From the fully welded barrels to the heavy gauge steel, they bring both function and beauty to life. Pits and Spits builds every product with the intention that it's going to get passed down from generation to generation. Whether you're into competition barbecue or you want to take that backyard grilling and barbecue game to the next level, there is a product for you. Check them out at Pits and Spits. That's PITTSANDSPITTS. PitsandSpits.com/BBQ Central. That's pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. And then as you accumulate up to $500 or more at checkout, use promo code BBQ Central for a free spice pack. That's right, BBQ Central at checkout for a free spice pack when you get $500 or more in the cart. pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. That's pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. We are back with Robert Moss right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
And we thank Meathead for joining us last segment. To this portion being brought to you by Fireboard. Monitor up to 6 different temperatures simultaneously. Connect to Wi-Fi for cloud-based monitoring, or connect via Bluetooth if you have Alexa or the Google Assistant in your home. You're in luck because Fireboard is fully integrated with both. Find out more by visiting fireboard.com or call 816-945-2232. My next guest is the contributing barbecue editor for Southern Living magazine, an accomplished author. He's also a restaurant critic where he's at locally. We pray for the hotline and welcome back Robert Moss. Robert, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Greg?
Absolutely fabulous. Happy New Year to you. And as 2022 ends, 2023 begins, there already seem to be no shortage of trends, either those being predicted that will happen at some point over the course of this year or through social media. It seemed right as the hour of 2023 hit, there was a brand new social media trend that was happening all over the place that we'll get to here in just a second. But let's first concentrate on what Meathead and I seem to be butting heads with, which was my mayo binder trend at the end of last year. At this stage, seeing the meteoric rise on such platforms as TikTok and Instagram, and my very public fight with somebody named Dick Paste, who also claimed credit for it, but I beat him down maliciously. Are we validated yet that I have created the mayo bindered trend of 2022?
Well, while you were talking to me, Dad, I went to my shelf and pulled the book off.
Don't go to the reference material.
Yeah. Well, I just want to gesture to it. He was gesturing to the reference material. I just want to point out that page 107, the fish problem, Meathead has one line on mayo, and it's one of the many options that you could use to fix notoriously sticky fish, as he later referenced. And it says coat the fish with mayo, which is about 1/3 oil after seasoning it. So, yeah, he talked about putting mayo on barbecue in the book, but can that really lead to a major TikTok trend?
No way. I mean, I was
as much as I like Meathead, and I like going to the book. You know, I can't really say that book from 2015 sort of sat there in the culture and it suddenly exploded in 2022. There must have been something else that sparked it.
No doubt about it. Robert Moss joining us here on the show. RobertFMoss.com is his website. The trend that hit as the year turned was this butter candle. Something that, you saw, and is it something that you would even consider attempting? Or having multiple around the house in case the power went out?
Well, I mean, I saw it in the sense that you had mentioned it, and I think on your last show, and I Googled it and found a couple TikTok videos. I'm not sitting there scrolling TikTok day in and day out, so it wasn't something that was high on my radar screen. It seems like if you say butter candle in February, I bet no one will know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember butter boards? Are those even a thing?
They were really big last year, of course.
Butter, yeah. I don't know if anybody's even doing that anymore. I think TikTok trends are interesting. I was actually talking to Jess Pryles, a friend of the show, about sort of the nature of the internet and TikTok, and I think she sort of put it in a good way. You know, someone who makes a living, you know, very, very dependent upon the internet. You sort of have two channels. You've got social media that people are turning to for instruction. You know, they're watching videos, learning how to do things. And then you have stuff that people are just scrolling through and they look at it as fun and they keep going. I would have to put the butter candle in that category. Not tempted to try it myself, but if you want to do it, yeah, more power to you.
these are my trend picks for 2023. Electric grills coming to the market in a very big way, legitimately from legitimate manufacturers. One or two hit towards, well, one was out pretty early last year, but I don't really think it caught a lot of steam until we were getting ready to turn the year. That was Charbroil's Edge. I believe Weber has one that is either being currently locked down with patents and other forms and filings, and will be brought to market at some point. But there are other big manufacturers out there who are going to be unleashing full-size electric grills into the market. So I think that's something that's going to be hitting in 2023 that people are going to at least seriously consider adding to the arsenal. I think we're past the time where people are going to get rid of one cooker in lieu of another. They're just starting to add or accumulate. Back in the day when I started doing just barbecue forums, we used to call it MCS, or multiple cooker syndrome. And this is kind of where we're progressing now. So somebody might think about adding an electric cooker, or if you're in an apartment or something that doesn't allow an open flame, this would certainly be a option for you. The other thing that I think, and this is more of the butter candle trend, is I think we're going to start seeing a lot more smoked meatloaf hitting the social media channels. This might seem novel. However, this was really big when I first got into barbecue back in 2003. People were like, "How have you ever smoked a meatloaf? And here's recipes. You put it on parchment paper, this, that, and the other thing." And it didn't go away necessarily, but I'm starting to see a rise in interest in smoked meatloaf all of a sudden through some of the social media platforms. So what are you looking to see, or what are you potentially seeing as trends in 2023?
I think both of yours are interesting. So let me react to those first. Sure. On the electric grill, what's driving that? Do you think it's more the marketing that's driving it, or more that it's filling a need that people have to? Is it simpler than cheaper than a pellet grill, but doesn't require all the mess of wood? Or
I don't think I can tell you that, especially with some of the manufacturers of pellet cookers out there, you can get, I wouldn't say a decent pellet cooker, but you can get a pellet cooker for $500, $600. And depending on the manufacturer, it could have a fairly decent capacity on it. The Charbroil Edge full-size electric grill is, I think, $650 or $700. So it's not necessarily inexpensive. It's not as much as a mid-size Weber gas grill at this point, a Genesis, which is going to be $1,000 or $1,100 with some of the upgrades that they've made to the latest version of the Genesis cooker. But this isn't a cheap introduction. I don't know where the impetus is here. I've never heard people clamoring for a full-size electric cooker, but it has to have come from somewhere.
Yeah. I doubt they just introduced it for random reasons. I'm a little skeptical on that one just because I don't see the niche that it fills. Like, it seems like there's already stuff out there that fills that niche, whether you want high-end or you want easy, set it and forget it or whatever. But we'll see. You may be right on that one. I do agree with you on the meatloaf, primarily because I've seemed to seeing that a lot more these days. I see it on restaurant menus. I see a lot of people doing it specials. I see it on social media. So definitely there's more interest in meatloaf. And I think that's actually tied into sort of my big trend for 2023. And it may be sort of like the mayo binder. This may be me trying to make it happen, because I like to. But I do think my big prediction is that 2023 is a year that brisket jumps the shark in barbecue. And again, being a Carolinian, proponent of whole hog, that this could be just me, talking my book, if you will. But does this feel it building that there's so many restaurants now opening from Seattle to Jacksonville to Minnesota, that everyone's serving brisket. I'm starting to feel like the pit masters are getting tired of it. The ones even in Texas, people are saying, well, everyone does brisket. Everybody does good brisket. How can you stand out from the crowd? I think meatloaf is sort of in that vein, in the sense that people are looking for something new and different. That, if you can't just show pictures of brisket on Instagram anymore, everybody has a picture of a brisket. It's almost like table stakes. It's like having a napkin or something. So I do think that we'll see some interesting new things. I'm particularly bullish on not just pork in general, which I think is great, but I'm particularly bullish on beef back ribs. The big prime, beef, plate ribs had their moment a while back, and it's actually sort of started off as pitmasters, trying to sort of separate themselves from brisket. Like, what can we do that's something even bigger than brisket? A bigger exploration. I had dinner the other night at Rancho Lewis here in Charleston, which is John Lewis's new Tex-Mex restaurant. John Lewis has Lewis Barbecue, was formerly at La Barbecue in Austin, and cooked with Aaron Franklin back in the trailer days. So a Texas brisket master, but his second restaurant has been a Tex-Mex restaurant that sort of pays homage. He grew up in El Paso, so it's sort of the food he grew up with. But he's doing these mesquite smoked back ribs. You can get a whole rack of them. It takes about 3 people to take it down. But boy, are they delicious. They're tender. They're smoky. It's so much more interesting than brisket. As much as I like the prime plate beef rib, that tends to be, super expensive to begin with. But also that big first bite, you don't want to keep eating it. So I think, things like back ribs, smoked meatloaf is another good one. I see lots of people doing things like beef cheeks these days. Trying to do anything new. So that's my big 2023 prediction, and also perhaps trying to make it happen, which is enough of the brisket. What else can we put on a pit that's good to eat? Robert Moss joining us here on the show. So you are a expert Southerner, at least to me, from somebody that is rarely in the South. Let's have a little bit of a language lesson here. I was doing some reading and studying up here and came across the word cookout, and then further along in the article, the word barbecue gets thrown out. Now, in the very early stages of this show, I was very opinionated on the words barbecue and grilling. Meathead and I's very first blow-up argument on the show was having diverging opinions on those particular words. And I said, no, there are two different cooking methods. This is what grilling means. This is what barbecue means. I've since chilled out because I've just gotten older and I probably don't care to have the same passion and zest to fight it. And I'm just happy if anybody's into one side or the other. But when you refer to the words cookout and barbecue, are these synonymous terms or are they independent? Well, I think it depends somewhat where you are. But as and actually I used to write a whole column on Southern icons for Serious Eats, where I said the whole premise is I'm explaining Southern food to Yankees, and so I'm explaining what it means. If you're in the South, and it, words don't have a inherent meaning of their own. It means what people hear and they think when you say it. And I already say, okay, if you're in the South and you say we're having a cookout, come over and bring something. In the South, you're going to think, okay, they're making probably hot dogs, hamburgers, maybe getting crazy and putting some chicken, but it's going to be on a grill. It's going to be on a hot heat. You're grilling on a kettle or something like that. If you say we're having a barbecue, no one's going to think you're in South Carolina, at least, that you're going to go eat hamburgers and hot dogs. You're going to probably have something that's been cooking all night. You probably have a bunch of sweaty, smelly men who've been up, drinking bourbon all night long, who are going to roll out a pork shoulder or pigs or ribs or something like that. So in the South, at least, if you talk about an event, a cookout is one thing, a barbecue is another, and you would never say, come on over this weekend, we're having a cookout, we're doing a whole hog. That just doesn't ring true. Yeah. Now, if you're in New Jersey, New York, and you say we're having a barbecue, come on over, then probably they would the guests would be very surprised if they showed up and you had a giant hog cooker out back with a whole hog on it. They would expect a grill with some weenies on it and maybe mushrooms and things like that. So when they're saying barbecue in the North, do you think they're referring to the vessel that they're cooking on versus the food that they're going to be presenting? They are referring to a couple different things. They're referring to a barbecue. A barbecue is an event. It's when you're cooking out, and at the barbecue there might be a barbecue, which would be the grill on which you're putting things. Meathead and I have actually had some of that argument going back and forth. The interesting thing is that those if you go back just a century in history, those two actually the cookout or the barbecue, they sort of evolved out of the same thing. What we call the backyard barbecue today really came about in the 1920s inspired. It was a bunch of New York magazines like Home and Garden and magazines like that started running these features saying a barbecue is a great event to have, and they actually referenced these large outdoor barbecues they'd have in California out west. And they said you can actually create a similar version in your backyard. You can dig a little pit in your backyard, and instead of cooking a whole pig like they might do at a southern barbecue or a California barbecue, you can put some some smaller cuts on it. That gradually, got built up into brazier grills and then kettle grills and everything else. So the barbecues actually split. And originally in the 1920s, a barbecue, there was no such thing as grilling in the backyard. A barbecue was cooked in a hole in the ground, but they diverged, and we've been fighting about it ever since.
Robert, we didn't visit in December, but during our time in November, you were just weeks away from the second edition of the Holy Smokes Low Country Barbecue Festival. So we take a last couple minutes here of the segment, recap that event, and let me know what you thought of it and the other folks that were in charge of getting it organized and helping it come off.
Yeah, I think the event was even a bigger. We expected it to be successful, and it was even a bigger success than we anticipated. We did sell out, which was a big deal. We actually sold out the morning of the event, right before we opened the gates, and which is great because it means we're going to be able to really create a big or give another big donation this year to Hogs for the Cause as well as to Ronald McDonald House. So that was a big success. We were in a new venue this year. We were at Riverfront Park in North Charleston, which is a beautiful park. It used to be the Navy base in Charleston. It's been since transformed. It's still in progress being transformed into a big park and development area, but it's overlooking the Cooper River. And unlike the first year, we had a lot more room this year. So everything was spread out a lot more. We had a little problem with lines the first year. This year, the lines were very manageable. The Texas Village, as Texas is wont to do, had a little bit of a line, but we timed it. I don't think anybody waited more than 10 minutes, even in Texas, which is a miracle. You can't do that in Texas. Most everywhere else, people moved in very quickly. It was very spread out. We had a lot of room for kids to run around and all that kind of stuff. So a big success. We did have a fourth village we added this year. We added a coastal village. So we had 4 different sort of styles of barbecue, so a little bit different variety and everything else. So all told, I think it was a great event. The weather was great. That's the one thing you can't control. No rain, 60-degree day, beautiful weather. So really went about as well as we could have asked for.
Are we thinking about the third edition at this point?
Absolutely. We are already booked for November of this year now, 2023.
Yep.
So we'll be doing it again. We'll be back at Riverfront Park. It was such a great venue. We'll do it again. We're actually meeting next week to sort of do our official debrief from this year and sort of talk about format changes and things like that. So we don't know what we might do differently. We'll build on success, but we try to do something new every year, and we encourage anybody. It's a great November is one of the best months to come to Charleston. So if you want to sort of pencil that in your calendar, we'll be doing it again, and we'll next time I'm on, I can probably give you more specifics about dates and how to find us and everything else.
Robert Moss is joining us here. You can see him the second Tuesday of every month, 35 past the first hour. Go to robertfmoss.com for more information. Robert, always appreciate the time, and we'll see you in February.
All right. Thanks so much, Greg. See you then.
There he is. Robert Moss right there. Again, the website, robertfmoss.com. Check out what he's up to. And as he said, no specific dates yet as they do the postmortem on the second annual Low Country Boil, or Low Country Barbecue. Charleston's great to visit in November. We will look to wrap the first hour in just a second. Let's talk about Big Papa Smokers, the one-stop online shop for all things barbecue, a curated selection of only the best outdoor cooking and grilling supplies, getting you on the path to better barbecue results in no time. Everything at Big Papa Smokers has been Pitmaster approved by Sterling Big Papa Ball himself, from the award-winning rubs and sauces, the American-made grills and smokers. They have something for every type of barbecue cook. Popular flavors of their rubs: Sweet Money, Cattle Prod, Cash Cow, Double Secret Steak Rub, all proven winners. 13 perfectly balanced flavors to transform ordinary meals into extraordinary. They also own Granny's Barbecue Sauce, so if you're looking for a new go-to sauce that will please everybody, Granny's traditional yet powerful flavor reminds us of why we fell in love with barbecue in the first place. Great all by itself, or if you're looking for a base sauce that you can further trick out and make your own, it's great for that too. Aside from the premium selection of rubs and sauces, they're offering a fine selection of cookers. If you're looking for a versatile smoker that's easy to use, check out that Mac 2-Star General Pellet Cooker. Big Papa Smokers, the exclusive Mac dealer, even offering special packages. If you're not sure of what grill you need, call them. Ask questions. They'll make sure you're headed in the right direction. 877-828-0727. That's 877-828-0727. Or shop their website at bigpapasmokers.com. That's BIGPOPPA smokers.com. Big Papa Smokers, proud sponsor of this show. And we will be back to wrap it up here in the first hour right after this. Stick around, be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
And we thank Robert Moss for joining us last segment. Once again, his website, robertfmoss.com. I would tell you to go sign up for the Q sheet, but apparently that's not something that's happening regularly, so don't sign up for that. Meathead is also now emailing me after he just pulled the segment about 30 minutes ago or so, making sure that he is telling me that he's the one that started all the mayo stuff. Yes, Meathead, yeah. Of course. That's right. Get Meathead's book. It was very popular. And now he's working on a second book that will be out next year, according to him. Remember, listen so we can all mark that down and then make sure in a year from now, make sure that book is out. All right, we are pointing to the second hour. Looking through instant chat here. Let's see. A lot of people in for Joe Martinez, so he's got an audience building. That's great. Here's a message from Tiger McCool Barbecue Company and Fire Cups at Instagram. Fire Cups at Instagram. John Miller, RIP. Leprechaun TV. Joe needs to come in like stone cold. Absolutely. Agree with that. Joe Martinez will be joining us in the second hour, talking about that food trailer. All right, stand by. We'll come back for the second hour, and we'll do a lot more hijinks and shenanigans. Check around. We'll be right back.